Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I am a cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage counseling, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. Now, if you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Counseling and Therapy Services at 301-325-1550, and our website is lifecoachdanamzalai.com. Today, I'm very excited to have on our podcast on season 3, episode number 3, a very special guest and author of Finding You, Steve Vincent. Now, just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Steve, the floor is yours.
Hey, Dr. Dan, thank you. Welcome. And hello, everyone. As you can hear, I talk a bit different too, and a bit funny maybe to Dr. Dan. I'm Steve Vincent. I'm from Australia. I'm a poet, author, a spiritual teacher, and I'm a really normal guy who I guess has begun the search for themselves and to be happy in my own skin. And it's taken almost a lifetime. And one of the things I really want to stress, Dr. Dan, and to you and to your listeners is I am just so normal. I have a wife, I have 4 children, I have a mortgage, I have all of those normal things, right? And often when you hear guests, they are some big, massive guru and do all these really cool things. I'm just really boringly normal.
Boring, Steve.
And the really, I guess in a nutshell, I've never really been happy or comfortable in my own skin, if I can put it that way. But the contrast is on the outward appearances. There's no problem, right? Everything is fine. Nice home, live near the beach, happy family, big family, blah, 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 blah. I have a nice life that I've built from the different careers that I've had. But I got to a certain point and it was kind of like looking outside of myself was not making me happy. The new car, the nice house, all of those things, I got to the stage where I started looking deeply within me, because my previous career was as a high school teacher, faculty head, and vice principal. And, that's a tough job. And, you're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of energies and all those sorts of things. And that, in a way, that wore me out. But it also was a reflection of the fact that I just wasn't happy with who I was and where I was at. And so I then spent 10 years as a writer, a copywriter, a commercial copywriter, writing ads and sales letters and all those sorts of things. I still do a bit of that, working with business owners, and everything was fine. I was really, really good at it. I'm really, really successful, made a lot of money. I've traveled the world twice with my family. I take 4 kids on a around the world holiday, a cruise in the Caribbean and a transatlantic cruise and trips to Disney World and things like that in your part of the world in Florida. So there is, I guess there's a certain level of material success, but I wasn't always happy, Dan. And it wasn't until I actually was honest enough with myself that I started going within. And I guess one other thing happened too. When COVID hit, I lost one of my biggest marketing clients. It was a 6-figure hit just like that overnight. Now,
Wow.
that it wasn't that I hadn't had client relationships end before, right? I mean, who doesn't in business, right? That's just life and in business. But this one really hurt. And it wasn't the money. And what I actually came down to, it hurt because I'd never actually failed at anything in my life, and I'd been driven by almost a fear of failure, and driven by this sense of having to be the trophy child and do the right thing. And it was kind of like my whole life I'd been trying to achieve to live someone else's dream, and doing all those, having all those achievements, that never made me happy. And what actually happened for me is I kind of lived a very successful but a very inauthentic life. And when COVID hit, it it gave me time. And so I just sat down at the back of my place, which is lovely water views and so forth. And I just started to write some words, what I was feeling. And they started to rhyme. And I realized this was really interesting. What I realized, I'd always written poetry, but I'd always shut that down, that creative side to myself. Like when I was a teenager, I went to an all boys school, and, that's not very manly to be, you're puffing your chest out in teenage boys do, to write poetry, like you get yourself beat up if you admit it, kind of thing. I'm talking back in the 80s, right? That's my vintage in high school. And I realized I'd always written poetry, and I showed a couple of my poems from when things slowed down with COVID, and it was really raw and really really personal. And what I noticed when I showed it to a couple of people, and to be honest, I was really nervous about doing that as well, right? Because it was really, for the first time ever, I'd revealing something of myself. And when I did, people went, wow, I really feel that. Gosh, that's really raw. That's really authentic. And a lot of women who I showed it to said that I actually cried when I read it. And if it's just one or two people, it could just be like your family being nice or your closest friend being nice, right? But when I showed it to a wider audience, they just went, oh wow, you've got to write more, and then you've got to publish this. And so I never set out to write a book of poetry. I never set out to do anything. It was just me and my thoughts and my rawness, and me looking within, trying to find, I guess, the reason for my discontent, because I had no physical outward reason to be discontented with my life. And I think a lot of us in the Western world in particular, we all have that to a degree, because we have generally a really nice life, right? Outwardly. Yet inside we're unhappy, we're dying, we're dark, whatever it might be. And I certainly faced that in COVID was a wonderful, wonderful gift to me, because it helped me to, I guess, finally stop, finally go within, finally be honest with myself and not wear a mask that I showed the rest of the world. Finally, it was the real me coming out, not the mask that I wanted to show the world. And one of the things I've done is I've delved deep into our shadow self, and each of us carries a shadow, the part of us that we show the world, and the shadow part of us. And the shadow part of us is all the stuff that we don't want to show the world, that we've shoved back down in there, like our jealousies, our pettiness, our shame, our embarrassments, our fear, all of those sorts of things. And being a trophy child as such, I never wanted to show that to anyone, because showing that, who wants to show that you're jealous and petty? I certainly didn't. It was confronting. And it was only that I started to look at that stuff and started to love those parts of me, because if we ignore those parts, because they feel yucky, if we ignore those what we call negative parts of ourselves, we're kind of denying part of who we are. And one of the things I've really delved into with looking at my shadow is learning to love all of me, because one of the things I've observed with myself is that when I felt a negative emotion, say it was jealousy, I would feel it, and feel it deeply, because I'm an empath, right? And I didn't know I was an empath until a couple of years ago, right? And I was like, oh, okay, that explains a lot. All right, that's why you're so weird and feeling and up and down and all those sorts of things. So just say it was jealousy. So what my life pattern would be, oh, I feel really bad about that. But I would deny that it was actually part of me, because I didn't, when I'd put a smile on, no, everything's fine, it's all right. And that's a lifelong pattern, right? And instead of in the moment of being able to accept that, yes, I was jealous, yes, I was petty. I'll give you an example. There's I have one of my favorite cafes, and it's got a lot of books and crystals. It's a woo-woo type shop, if we could call it like that. And I used to love going there, and my book is in a number of local stores, and I offered it to them to carry, and they rejected it. And that hurt. I love you guys. Don't you guys love me back? And I had a friend not long after that say, well, let's go to this particular cafe. and and grab a coffee. And I said, I don't go there anymore. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, they're not supporting me. They're not taking my book. So why should I go there and spend my money there and support them? And they went, gee, isn't that a little bit churlish and childish and petty? And I said, no, it's not a little bit churlish and childish and petty. It's 100% churlish, childish and petty. And I own that, right? They're my feelings. I own that. And I'm loving those feelings of me because they are part of me. I'll go for a coffee with you, but I ain't going there. And I've never been back there. And I am quite happy being petty, churlish and childish about that. And why should I spend money with them? They're not going to support me,
Absolutely.
And yeah, so that's an example of the I guess the old me, if I could put it like that, would have gone, yeah, let's go there. And I would have smiled at everyone, but I would have walked away from there feeling miserable and terrible because I denied that part of me. Yet I was able to accept those childish, petty, churlish feelings of as part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was okay with that. And I was okay to take the mask off and just be raw and real with whatever came. And that was one of the things I think that I've really learnt, Dr. Dan, over the years, is that I've never actually had the courage to be honest about how I'm feeling in a moment. And by suppressing all of that, that has not served me. You know?
Yourself as a highly sensitive person, Steve?
Yeah, totally. I'm highly sensitive. I'm a deep feeler, a deep thinker. Here's the duality of that as well. Like all my life, I'd suppress that because I saw it as weak. But I realize it's also my superpower because it allows me to connect with people. And I denied that my whole life.
In your family members, like your parents, were they also highly sensitive people? I mean, do you think it goes down from generation to generation in terms of this kind of situation, or do you just kind of like based on your own experience, you build this empathy, you build this kind of like highly sensitive situation or person?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that about my parents and all of my siblings. Maybe one or two of them. That's a really tough question. I'd probably just say I am what I am. I've just come to know that, that's actually who I am. And I'm finally becoming comfortable with that and with all of the, I guess, the ups and downs that come with that, and not having to be on the pedestal, the trophy that never fails, and not having to be the person that is so closed off and protected that I can't talk about things that are true about me and my vulnerabilities. And, you would have heard Brene Brown's strength through vulnerability and all that sort of thing. It's really true though. And here's one of the things that I've learned. It takes so much energy to carry with us and hide those things we don't want the world to see. That's an awful lot of energy. So no wonder we're so damn tired. We're so stressed because we're carrying all this stuff, trying to be that which we're not, and until we put that stuff down and that energy down, life is tough. And my life, I had a good life, but I was unhappy. One part of me was unhappy,
Do you feel, Steve, sorry to interrupt you. Do you feel
go.
expressing yourself, your vulnerability allowed you to be able to free your mind, to be able to free your feelings of always keeping things from within and always being afraid to express yourself?
Oh, totally. It was like the weight has lifted off my shoulders, right? It was kind of like, oh, finally, I can be me. It's okay to be angry. I'll give you an example. A lady that I was working with and doing some stuff with, she said to me one day, she said, you're really only happy when you're grumpy, aren't you? I went, no, I'm not. And then I went, oh, actually I am. And it was the first time in my life I had admitted that I was a cranky bum, and I was a grumble bum. And here's the interesting thing. When I acknowledged that, when I accepted that, when I guess loved that grumpiness as part of me, the grumpy energy just kind of dissipated. Which was a really, and that's one of the things that I found, Dr. Dan, is that when I see something, when I openly acknowledge and even love being grumpy, I'm grumpy less, less times. And like I would almost wake up every day being grumpy, but I would deny being grumpy. Yeah, how are you this morning, Dad? Yeah, I'm really good. No, I'm miserable. No, and now if my wife asks me that, I'll say, no, I'm grumpy. Don't talk to me.
Okay.
Um,
You're being honest about it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I know that sounds so simple, but and people, I think people we also lie to ourselves. I'm very honest about my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you are with some of them. Maybe you are with the ones you're comfortable being honest about.
I see.
But my guess is there are some of those that you still want to hide from the world. You still want to put a mask on, to get by as a protection mechanism.
So how do you select which emotions you want to divulge to the world and which one you want to keep in? Because obviously, if we express every inner emotion, Steve, we're going to be constantly complaining about everything in our lives, about everything that is going wrong, or even the things that are going right. We forget to appreciate the good things because we're so used to better things, that is. So when do you say to yourself, okay, you know what? I've expressed myself too much. I need to kind of like let go of things, not just talk everything out and not just blur out everything that I feel at every single second. So when do you say to yourself, that's okay to release, but that needs to be held inside?
Yeah, good question. I would say that don't for a minute think I've got all this figured out. I'm a work in progress. Sometimes I get it 100% right. Other times I still cringe at, did I really say that? And I guess I get back to, well, I guess at least I was true to myself in that moment. And I think that's where the power of discernment comes in. And I guess too, I'm developing a very libertarian kind of streak to me, and I'm really big about personal sovereignty. And if you can't stand up to Auntie Doris, nasty Auntie Doris at Christmas, when the family's together, maybe you're not really being sovereign and true to yourself. Auntie Doris, who's ruled the roost in the family, who everyone's scared of. Everyone's got one of those, right? It's not just my family. But actually, and that's the thing, right? Families are really good for us to show us all of those, our mirrors and our shadow parts, right? If we're triggered by family members, that means there's something within us, that is triggering. Because I think it's Dr. John DeMartini. He has this little tool that says the seer, the seeing, and the seen are one and the same. So if you're seeing something negative in someone else, there's a really good chance that's actually in you. But what we do, we deny that it's in our shadow, in that part of ourself, and we project it out on someone else. So if you're at Christmas, I'll give you an example. Say Christmas is a good time of year because that's when families get together and things can unwind pretty quickly. Just say your sister-in-law Tracy, let's call her Tracy if you like. Gosh, I hate Tracy because she's so selfish. She never lifts a finger. She never brings any food, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And oh gosh, I just can't stand Tracy, right? Everyone's got a Tracy in their family, right? And you know what? This year, poor old Auntie Betty, she nearly fell over. Tracy didn't even get off her backside to help her. She could have fallen, and Tracy just sat there. She's so selfish. And when I'm feeling that about myself, I remember that tool of the seer, the seeing, and the seen are one and the same. So if I'm projecting selfishness out onto someone else, where is the selfishness in me? See, it's so easy to deny that negative feeling in ourselves and then project it out onto someone else, right? That's our survival mechanism. Yet I would encourage listeners, if someone is triggering you like that, where is that in you? Because there's a good chance that they're just mirroring back what you don't want to see in yourself.
Isn't that similar to hypocrisy?
Yeah, it is.
So yeah,
it's total. Yeah.
I mean, then at this point, because it's hard to pinpoint someone else's problem to say, you're a selfish person, but then from within, we know that we're also selfish. So this is kind of like anyone who would get this kind of like notice, Tracy will come back to you and say, you know what, Steve, you are also selfish.
Yeah.
And then when
no, I'm not. I'm a very generous person. No, I'm not. No. How dare you say that about me, right?
Yes.
That's what our ego does to protect us, right?
Yes. Right.
Whereas if we're seeing stuff like that in someone else, and there's a good chance it's in us, we're just denying that it's there, and because that's that duality of our human existence, right? We don't have night without day. We don't have light without dark.
Correct.
So we don't have generosity without selfishness. We are all of those things, and yet we deny that we're selfish. It's easier to project that out onto someone else.
I see. Now, when it comes to your level of expression, when it comes to your family members or people that are close to you, do you feel that you are more open, Steve, than what you would be with strangers? Let's say you go to a network event, you don't know someone, but yet they say something that you feel that it was condescending or insulting. Would you express yourself equivalently that you would be with your family, or because this is a person that you don't know, you would limit the way that you express yourself?
It's a really interesting question. I would, and again, it's really hard to give a blanket answer when there's so many possible scenarios of that. In terms of being honest and things like that, you also must have your personal boundaries, right? That's really important. If someone oversteps them, then you have a right to put your boundaries there. But if someone says something like that, I might just say, where is that in you? What do you mean? Or why do you say that? Is that something in you that you see in me? There are, depending on who it is in the scenario, or I might even just be a little bit more provocative and say, okay, well, how does that benefit you? What you're saying is a load of rubbish, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so how does that benefit you? Well, it doesn't benefit me. Well, you sure? Is it making you think? Well, maybe. Well, I don't agree with you though. All right, well, how does it benefit you? So there are, and I guess the thing too, it's not about trying to be clever or be a smart aleck, or a smart ass, as we say, like and try to outthink and outmaneuver someone else. It's about being true to you and standing in your power. If someone does do something like that, then if I've got a mask on and I'm not being true to me, one of two things will happen. I'll either withdraw or I'll fire up, right? It's often one end of the stick like that. Whereas if you're centered and in your power, your response is quite different. And that's what I find. If people are not being true to who they are, we get one of those two extremes, that extreme withdrawal, slink and run away, or the extreme aggression of, how dare you, rah, 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 rah. Whereas if you're in your center and in your power and in your sovereignty, because you are, honest with yourself and you're okay with yourself, then, gee, how does that benefit you, Dr. Dan? Or what makes you say that, Dr. Dan? There's a real difference between those two. I'm not running away and I'm not being aggressive. I'm just standing in my power and responding.
That's interesting, Steve. Now, for those who actually are going through, if we could focus on this subject, those who are going through imposter syndrome, okay? Those who actually are doing the teaching, but deep inside they say, I am not true to myself. I'm here, but am I really genuine? Am I really the right person to be able to teach others how to live their life when I don't even know how to do it myself? So do you feel that you went through some similar situation as imposter syndrome, and you felt that you didn't fulfill every aspect of your life, and this is where you second guess yourself?
Yeah, wow, that's a really interesting question. Here's where I think imposter syndrome comes in. When you try to be perfect, when you put on this mask of, I've got this all together.
Okay.
Right. I say quite, and I guess it's the strength and vulnerability thing. I ain't got this all figured out. I'm a work in progress. I'm really good at loving my shadows and looking in different parts of myself, except when I'm not, and that's part of the human experience and part of the depth of diving in to really who we are. And I'll give you a quick example. What we often do with it, and this is around the imposter syndrome, is that we often elevate people, right? We see someone speaking or whatever on stage, we go, oh, wow, they're so good. And then when we do that, we denigrate ourselves or put ourselves down, right? And that serves no one. You don't know what's going on for that other person. And the example I'll give you, when I was a copywriter, I worked for a number of big event promoters, and I saw a lot of the financial gurus, if you like, come and speak from stage and do their pitch and things like that. And it was real, I marveled at how good these people were. And I also got to see behind the scenes where, a lot of them were only one bad pitch away from financial ruin, so just be really careful with elevating others, because when you do, you put yourself down. And that's where a lot of that gap between elevating others and yourself down is where the imposter syndrome comes down. You try and be like the other person who you perceive as being perfect and having it all together. Whereas have I got it all together? Some days I'm absolutely fantastic and I'm really good. Other days I'm not. And I guess when I work with people too, one of my favorite sayings is, the gurus are always right, except when they're wrong.
Yeah.
That's
a good point. In your book, Finding You, Steve,
Yep.
all the poems, are they an expression of what you've experienced in your past life? One would say past life, not when you died and relive, but more of your past thoughts of how you saw yourself, how you felt when you kept things inside. Is that an expression of your own experience?
Yes. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Yes and no. The yes is there's a lot there that are really personal, and probably the apology to my kids is a really emotional poem, which is about, gee guys, I'm sorry I've messed you up. I didn't have this life thing figured out until now, and it's kind of too late because you're 18 and 20, up to 25. The imprint period is a long gone kind of thing, and so there are parts like that, but there's other, I guess, like the first poem in the book, A Note from an Old Man, which tells the story of, gee, I wish I knew this stuff when I came to my life, and then I wouldn't have made so many mistakes, and then there's others about, when Gaia talks, and then I also believe one of our, the reasons we are all very unhappy with life is we've disconnected from nature. We've disconnected from the source of all things. And so when Gaia talks is a poem about that humanity's disconnect from nature. And that's one thing I try and do. I live near the beach, so I try and get to the beach and walk every day. Again, I would love to, Dan, I get there every day. I go and meditate for 2 hours under the tree and love, and it's all Zen, but I'm a normal person, and I probably get to the beach. It's 5 minutes drive away, but I get to the beach maybe 3 or 4 times a week. I would love to go. In fact, if I could just live on the sand, I'd be really happy, but that's not realistic in life, right? So, so it's both. It's what. So when I've written a poem, there was something in me, but then I would look out, and feel into, is it also part of humanity? And so it's both those things. It's my story, but I think it's also humanity's story as well, in terms of our disconnect from nature and the unhappiness that brings, disconnect from source. So it's both of those.
I see. So where can people find your book, Steve?
Yeah, sure. It's on Amazon and Booktopia. And if you go to stevevincentonline.com, you'll find out more about me. If you live in Australia, it's mostly probably an American podcast, it's findingyoubook.com.au. But if you are international, Amazon and Booktopia are the two big ones. There are a number of other online platforms that sell it, but they're the two, I guess, biggest and easiest ones to get it through. So Amazon.com and Booktopia.com. And stevevincentonline.com is where you can find out more information about me and all of my mistakes and mess ups and all of my humanity, right? My darkness and my light, because we're all like that. We all have those things. It's not, that's just the human experience. And until we love those dark parts of ourselves, we're kind of trapped in this falsehood of just light.
Yeah, like a matrix.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, that is all the time that we have for today's episode. I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us, especially living in the opposite side of the world in Australia. Thank you for participating and inspiring our many listeners with your incredible story. Now, we hope that you have all enjoyed today's episode, and I'm very excited about the many upcoming guests that we have scheduled for season 3 of the Happiness Journey podcast, filled with inspirational stories just like the one that you listened to today. Now, here are a few concluding words of wisdom. As a single footstep will not make a path on earth, so a single thought will not make a pathway in your mind. To make a deep physical path, you need to walk again and again. To make a deep mental path, you must think over and over the kind of thought that you wish to dominate in your life. So, what thought will you choose in your private life? The choice remains yours. So, choose wisely. My name is Dr. Dan Amzalag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.